Welcome to Mortgage Innovators Cybersecurity Panel. My name is Veronica Nguyen, co-founder and Executive Vice President at BeSmartee. Today, we will be discussing what you should be doing immediately in this environment. I have two experts in the field, and we'll be discussing the topic right now. Let's go ahead and get started. Robert, can you introduce yourself to our panelists?
Yes, thank you, Veronica, and welcome everyone. It is a privilege to be part of the Mortgage Innovator Conference and definitely a privilege to be part of this panel. I have been in the mortgage business for probably going on 30 years, most of that from a technology perspective. I have served as CIO for a number of medium and large-size mortgage companies, as well as working for large banks as well. Currently, I am the president and founder of Inventiv Technologies. We are a managed service provider and a consulting firm, and we specialize in all things mortgage and financial services. We cover a wide variety of products and services that we offer to our clients, one of which also happens to be cybersecurity.
Thank you, Robert. Let's go ahead and move to our next expert panelist, Suri. Can you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on this panel, Veronica and California MBA, Susan and Dustin. I'm CEO for Funding Shield. It is a financial technology company that's helping prevent wire and title fraud in the real estate and mortgage lending business in the U.S. My background is I grew up in technology, and I've been part and parcel of many different businesses where as a leadership executive and then CEO and owner-operator, now can call myself an entrepreneur, and have basically run businesses primarily taking technology, optimizing different sectors and industries from Wall Street to media to animation to healthcare, human capital, and several others. Today at Funding Shield, I'm running the business with my team, where we are one of the leading financial technology, wire fraud and title fraud prevention companies, ensuring in this pandemic and beyond, there are ways to embrace technology, facilitate safeguarding transactions at the most vulnerable times while helping our clients save money and get a better ROI.
Thank you, Robert and I, for those introductions. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and start with Robert. Robert, what are some ways that you ensure that the company is protecting themselves, that is protecting their data, to make sure that their network is safe?
There are a number of things that we do to help companies. We have spent virtually 95% of our time in exactly that endeavor. We've worked with a number of mortgage clients, manufacturing clients who were not prepared to move so much of their workforce to a remote situation. So we have done everything from helping them procure equipment to, more importantly, helping them begin securing the home office environments for their employees. Unfortunately, by moving to a remote workforce, we open ourselves up. And with many companies, unfortunately, we have dropped some of our best practices when it comes to security. So we have tried to step in with our clients and help them apply as much security as possible, while at the same time, of course, getting them up and running in that remote environment. We've helped with everything from encrypting hard drives on their remote computers. We help them secure the home router. We help them separate their home and work devices on the home network. We help them patch those routers, which is, again, a first line of defense always. Also, as a managed service provider, if they need it, we are able to provide a full suite of protection tools for the remote office employees. We cover everything from antivirus, malware protection, dark web monitoring. We have two products that are comprehensive email security platforms, and we try to make sure that our clients have those in place and are protected from the attacks that are so prevalent right now. They're actually more widespread in this COVID environment than they were before. We take things a step further as well with our clients. We try to work with them on the server and network level, ensuring that critical patching is done. Again, a very important first line defense. We also have helped clients validate and confirm that their backups are working. It's your number one protection against ransomware. Luckily, this doesn't happen very often, but I do have to say with one client, we had their internal IT tell executive management that the backups were fine. They asked us to actually just come in and confirm that, and we found that the backups had not taken place in over 3 months.
Wow.
So we jumped in and helped them get that set up and provided a validation method for them. Another thing that we're helping clients with that's important is we're setting up companies with user awareness training, security awareness training, again, hugely important. People are often our weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity, and this is true with phishing emails and those types of attack. It's very important. It has always been very important, but it's even more important today in this current pandemic environment that you provide your end users with security awareness training. Another very important thing that I want to bring up quickly that we help with is security event logging and alerting solutions. Again, this is how basically you're determining if someone has breached your network and how you're figuring out where they are, what they're doing, that type of thing. So that's very important, and one of the main things that we'd recommend to our companies that are listening today. And then finally, if you haven't, you should be implementing multi-factor authentication. We've helped a couple of clients set that up that have not had it. And a new project that we're working on with a mortgage banking client actually is setting up a virtual desktop infrastructure. So with this, it is a more secure environment, and it also is going to help the client reduce costs and especially the time to set up new employees. And we are in the process of vetting that. We're in a full-blown test. We are helping them with full-time employees. We are helping them with onshore contract employees, and they are also using offshore contract resources to help with underwriting, processing, even video production, et cetera. And so we are going to help them with that virtual desktop environment and get that up and running as soon as possible.
Yeah, Robert, that's great that you're right there leading charge in the cybersecurity. I know that when I took my cybersecurity class here, people don't find out that somebody breached your data until 12 months later. So it's really important in this type of environment, especially having a lot of people working from home. In an earlier discussion,
happens more often than not, where the hackers will breach the network and they'll actually just sit and monitor and study for months before they will mount an attack.
Yeah, so I think that training is really important. In an earlier discussion, we talked about disaster recovery plans that you help create, especially during that pandemic. I know that even our vendors, we've seen more of that request. So I can imagine some people not having those in place. So can you share with the audience some of the best practices to getting that in this type of environment?
Yes, I can. More clients are starting to ask for that. Auditors are beginning to ask for that. The first time that we revised a disaster recovery business continuity plan for a client was actually a relatively large mortgage company. And so that was a great learning experience for both of us. But there are certain things that you have to do, and I think we're all realizing that as we get further into the pandemic. But invariably, probably the vast majority of our DRBCP plans are designed around a natural or a man-made disaster that differ in their severity but in most cases, they're relatively predictable, and they're almost always short in duration or limited in scope. With the pandemic, you can throw all of that out the window. As you can see, this has gone on far longer probably than any of us imagined. So that you have to then build into your DR-BCP plan the ability to have and determine the effect of a long-term disaster, if you will. So, and you have to plan for phases. So you have to change your framework then for allowing that. Not just how do you get the employees to remote, but then how do you phase them in? You've got to build in a lot of new parameters around health, the social distancing, the cleaning of the office, you name it. There's just a variety of health measures that you have to build into the plan. And as we see with this pandemic, it's coming in waves. So we're now going back and revising that plan to adjust and deal with the different phases and waves of the pandemic, if you will. So, best practice is really honestly to prepare for this to last a very long time, and to very much you need to concentrate on the health aspects and how to properly bring people back to the office in a safe and secure manner. Another thing that's come out of this, if you have a good DR-BCP plan, you're going to have an oversight framework, and you're going to have a framework for revisiting that plan and making adjustments as you need to. It should be a living document. Very important as you add the pandemic planning to your DR-BCP to have that oversight. As we've seen again with this pandemic, things change. We're going into additional waves. With my client in particular, we were actually in the process of beginning to bring the first employees back when the second wave hit, and here in Arizona, they shut everything down again. So we went back into lockdown. So we had to adjust for that. So have a good solid oversight framework and then revisit that often and make sure that that's in place. And obviously and I'm sure most of you have done this already, given that we're so far into the pandemic, but you've got to make sure that you're taking into account all aspects. How do you deal with your customers? Do you set up televideo meetings? Do you have them only come to certain offices? How do you limit their contact? You've got to make sure you're providing masks and hand sanitizer and all of those types of things. So there's a lot of small things, a lot of large things that you've got to really take into account when you're faced with a pandemic such as this one.
Thank you, Robert. Those are great tips for our audience. We're still in the pandemic. We're not out in, here in California, at least the governor, has different steps of, people coming back to work. And then, then you get shut down again. So definitely we do have to be flexible in changing those plans there as we see fit. Ike, what have you seen during that pandemic that has changed in the field that you're covering when it comes to wire fraud?
Thanks. As Robert was sharing earlier, we've seen pretty much the same, like the industry is experiencing. Workforces are being asked to work from home, but they still come together as teams, even though they're in different silos or different geographies, and they're finding this common united purpose to work at the firm they're at and the clients that they're servicing and the industry they're in. The challenges are the same and maybe beyond what Robert shared from his perspective, and we very much see the same. It's good to hear that Robert's firm provides those level of hardware and software solutions to do that. We are a pure software firm. We're on the cloud. We provide a very malleable, scalable, plug-and-play, user-centric experience where in this environment, the transition of going to WFH creates that perfect storm for a number of these operators or business lenders or businesses and other stakeholders that work on their behalf, from title companies to escrow companies and a number of other firms or attorneys and so on, that fraudsters can take advantage and do take advantage of those vulnerabilities. And we've seen a huge spike in that rise, in that space, in wire fraud and title fraud. And we are preemptive in the space where we not only just look for the data inconsistencies, the vulnerabilities that firms are exposed, the workflows that are disjointed in this transition where they were not doing this before. Suddenly they have to accelerate towards finding these solutions. And when the firms are looking to accelerate towards finding these solutions, there's a huge skills gap. So a lot of employees are not up to speed with technology, or were hesitant of using technology, or are still in the process of getting educated or updated on what tools are available. And this industry is such that over the last 10 years or more, a ton of technology initiatives have been made. However, there is no one standard protocol in play for them to use as a Microsoft Office, plug and play, use it. So each state has a different law, each state has different rules, and the burden of ensuring that stakeholders and parties are complying with mandatory regulations, federal and state, and operating within their jurisdictions, licensed jurisdictions. And they have all the other requirements that are needed in order for a lender to ensure that he's got the right parties. And if anything breaks down, the lenders are obliged to take care of that loss and pay for the penalty.
You talk about the spike. You talk about the spike in fraud during the pandemic.
Yes.
Do you have some numbers you can share with the audience what the spike looks like
Yeah, absolutely. So our firm is a real-time data analytics company that is an exchange. So at the last moment prior to funding of a transaction, at the closing menu, we provide the safeguards and preemptively look at all what's going on and ensure that there is no wire or title fraud. Our Q2 results compared to our Q1 results for this year in wire and title fraud, we just released that analytics to the market, to a number of publications, and shared it with MBA and CMBA members, and it's been substantial. There's been a 50% increase in fraud risk exposure in CPL errors and issues, closing protection letters. There's been a 530% increase in CPL and agent verification errors with title insurers. There's been a 135% increase in state licensing issues. Now, all of these things that I'm pointing out, our software and our solutions, proprietary software, are able to delineate and provide the results to our customers and clients and lenders as to, in a transaction, any transaction at any given time, where these inconsistencies came in. Could be human error, it could be data mismatched, it could be, God forbid, fraud perpetuated. And being ahead of that is the key, not finding out later. As you and Robert pointed out, a number of frauds when discovered are a few months later. We don't allow that to happen. Our software is real-time data security, transmission, and preemptive identification, preemptive resolve in providing a solution for that problem, not just identifying a problem.
When it comes to identifying the fraud within your software per se, how are lenders should be educating their staff to be aware of inconsistencies?
Very good question. So, like I mentioned earlier, skills gap is a big thing in this industry. And lenders, great leadership in play today, they're embracing technology and these kind of solutions faster than what they used to do before. There is no choice. On the other hand, how to educate your clients becomes how to facilitate not only your clients and your own staff, like you pointed out, facilitate education, training, and introducing them to solutions that have been put together to help them, empower them, and solve problems. Not just throw new software at them, but our software has been designed. We are a result of listening to our customer and listening to our industry's need. And these workflows have been designed with feedback from such clients and employees of such clients. And to more you involve them with producing these kind of automation and workflow for themselves, they automatically feel part of the solution, not being thrown at just as a software for them to use, but they have provided solutions to automate redundancies where they are educated, simultaneously feel like it's a player coach kind of a thing. They're playing, they're editing, they're making sure it works, and they're making jobs better for themselves and better customer service experience, no fraud, better margins, better bottom results, ROI, sustainable business, sustainable jobs, and sustainable industry that you're dealing with, because there's a lot of volatility that we're dealing with today.
Thank you, I. What about you, Robert? Do you see that on your side, an increase of training the staff when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, as Ike said, that is no longer optional. It should not be optional. We have to spend the money as companies to educate our staff and to avoid these types of fraud. And it's increasing everywhere. It's not just wire and title fraud, but it's across the board. We're seeing just exponential increases in attacks, in phishing attacks, in ransomware attacks. We're seeing websites spoofed. We're seeing large companies spoofed. We're seeing Google alerts that are spoofed and sent to people that are working remote. So it's just hugely important to embrace the education and to make sure that you have that security awareness training for your company and have it across the board, just from phishing attacks, but even more importantly, in Ike's area with the wire and title fraud. You can't afford to have a misstep there.
I would add to that, if you don't mind. I mean, a lot of leadership today is already demonstrating that they want to have open channels with employees and staff. They're stakeholders of the firm. This brain trust of the firms, leadership knows they have to empower the brain trust with new financial technology tools in order for them to be competitive in this market, and hence the firm itself. You can't, I use this line all the time, you can't send your soldiers into a gunfight with a knife. You can't. In this digital environment, you got to make sure you empower your team. You empower your brain trust. And you have an open channel of communication. Their feedback is very important. To have a central mechanism in play of getting your client, your employee feedback is very, very important. And then we've also seen leadership taking today in this environment, cutting down their executive pay, providing financial aid to employees, facilitating these tools for them to have jobs, not layoffs, and keeping a sustainable business. It only comes from sustaining your employees, your stakeholders, and the tool sets you need to provide them.
Talking about providing tools to your employees so they can go out there and, fight, as you call it, every day. How can a company play offense as opposed to defense when it comes to wire fraud?
Best defense is offense. Basically, it is that. To be preemptive is you already know the industry already is plagued with these fraudsters and losses from these kind of exposures. To stay ahead of it, you can't just throw more and more bodies at it in an environment where some of the digitization in the industry has gone to a point where you can use these examples. The LOS systems that have become unicorns in the industry provide a whole lot of automation on the front end in aggregating data and providing a very crucial part in cutting down time and being competitive. But the loan origination cost has gone from $1,500 to almost $9,000, $10,000. Technology helped to compete, but it also took the price up. That doesn't really help that business to sustain itself. And now you have this one loss that could be an average loss. Let's say an average loan today in the country is $237,000. And when you lose that one transaction of $237,000 where you have no recourse today in the market, no insurance covers it, the banks don't cover it, the title insurance doesn't cover it. And when you have that loss as a lender, you end up in a position where you're already operating at less than 1%, 50 bips of a margin on volume they're dealing with. At that one loss, what it does to them is takes away the working capital. It ends up costing close to $900,000 by the time you recovering from that loss from legal bills, attorneys, investigations, audits, filings, and things of that sort. That's a lot of money for a lender where they have to do X so many number of deals in order to recover from that one loss. Not to say reputational risk that comes with it, not to forget the lenders that are behind them, warehouse banks, the asset quality that they're financing towards. They start looking at it and say, this is a risky trade for us, risky lender. They're not necessarily complying with all the regulatory needs that are there to cover risk. And so it comes down to all of those issues as well for what you asked.
Thank you, Ike. Let's go ahead and move to Robert. Robert, what other cybersecurity issues have you seen during this pandemic?
There's a number of different things. You know, a lot of what is happening is just an increased number of attacks and different variety of attacks that have always been there. So the phishing emails have gone through the roof. We're seeing primarily just an increase in those attacks based on the pandemic. So they're playing on people's hearts, on their kindness, on their caring, their fear in a number of ways, trying to get them to click on these links, which will either download their malware, take them to a malicious site, download ransomware, all these types of things. But they're doing it by playing upon our better instincts, our caring and our compassion. So there's just a huge increase in COVID type attacks based on that. We're also seeing a big increase in attacks through social media in the same way. There have been a number of malware attacks that have come through the COVID mapping. You know, hey, here's a good thing, track where the COVID is most prevalent, and you click on the map and the next thing you know, you've downloaded malware. So, you know, it's all these types of things, malicious websites, hijacked websites, spoofed websites, social media, and increased phishing attacks that look good on the surface, but are not.
Now, cybersecurity, it's a really hot topic, and do you think that mortgage lenders are prepared to have the type of staff that is needed to put everything in place? And if they don't, what should they be doing for, you know, maybe a smaller institution that doesn't have the deep pockets? It's a bigger lender.
Very good question. If you don't mind, Robert, I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Veronica, very good question. There's so many different lenders in the country, as you know. There's banks that have tons of resources, and then there's non-bank lenders that don't necessarily have deep pockets and have to operate in an environment where they have limited resources depending on the size of their institution. And so not everybody can afford to throw a lot of people at it. Unfortunately, since 2008 and the global crisis, the burden of all these new regulations and rules that they need to comply with falls on the lender's shoulders. And then when you look at the country that's so large and has 50 states where you've got 50 different statewide rules, regulations, and requirements, then add to it attorney versus non-attorney states, then add to it all the other stakeholders that work on behalf of the lender. If anything goes wrong with them and they're not checked before you use them, that burden sits on the lenders. That task is a very heavy burden on their shoulders. And not everybody can throw a whole lot of resources on ensuring every transaction has been vetted by state, account, wire, ownership, insurance, E&O, attorney, escrow. By the time you go through that grid, it's a very large task. And to close that transaction in an environment where everybody's saying that, oh, we'll take, rather than 60, 90 days that it used to be, now we're going to do it in 1 week. Very, very expensive for lenders and very onerous work. And so thank God for technology. These solutions have been prepared by firms like us and others, like Robert and folks, where a lot of these redundancies have been automated in workflows that now need to prove themselves that they are efficient. And so you can have a proven technology that's user-centric and has an automation in play that can actually provide that kind of a requirement from these lenders. And rather than throw a lot of money at trying to build your own technology that the industry's done in the past, or rather than hire a number of bodies and hope everybody's doing their job, the solutions now are put in place where it is plug-and-play solution, it's malleable, it's scalable, it pays for itself, and when your markets go up, you don't have to hire more people, you just pay per as you use. And when markets are down, you don't have to lay off people and deal with whole sorts of right-sizing. This software still goes up and down with you. And this kind of a financial suitable partner and solution is a sustainable partner, it's a sustainable solution, and it's a profit partner, not a cost center anymore. So that's how I view as where the market is today. That's exactly how Funding Shield's built to provide that service based on the needs of the industry from the clients. So we didn't come off the shelf and provide it. We had to design it with the banks and sitting with them. I'll give it to Robert.
Thank you, Ike. Robert, you have something to share?
Yeah, I do on this. I mean, I want to affirm again what Ike is saying. You can't do it yourself, and you don't want to try to build these solutions yourself. You don't want to attack it with hiring a bunch of people. So utilize technology, utilize vendors that have already proven that have a scalable solution like Ike's. For us, we're an outsourcing vendor, so we can help you with all of these additional tasks that have hit us because of the pandemic that your internal IT staff cannot possibly handle. They can't even handle the new help desk requests that are coming in as a result of, I mean, I can't tell you how many IT people we've helped who said, if I get one more, how do I connect to VPN? Or I can't see my resources. Did you connect to the VPN? What's that? You know, so we can take that burden off. And, you know, the bottom line is with all of us here, I have a motto: collectively, we are better than we are individually. And this is a case where that is so true. And I'm sure Ike and his firm feel the same way. We're here to partner. So we want to help you succeed. We want to do the things that we do best, take that load off, help you be more strategic. We want you to be the best mortgage banker that you can be, the best title company that you can be. Let us help you be that.
Focus on the low interest rates and getting that volume, and utilize the experts like Robert and Ike.
Yes.
Exactly.
We're wrapping up here. Just a couple of final thoughts here. Ike, what do you think about blockchain? Do you think that's an emerging technology given our environment in a COVID?
Blockchain is definitely an emerging technology. I'm not sure how quickly can it be deployed to unify all the sources to deliver. Blockchain, I use an analogy that comes from my past experience being in fiber optics. The blockchain I consider as a general ledger that everybody knows, only secure for the members, that's secure for members that are part of the transactions that they can use today, tomorrow, and historical audits and so forth. However, before you send something into that blockchain, you need to make sure that it's vetted, verified, and validated. So it's only as good as a general ledger if the transactions that have been sent in there for recording are good, are verified. If you send in garbage, you'll just end up recording garbage. So having spent 2 years with MISMO and MBA and sitting on fraud and risk committee at MBA myself, and coming from tech, spent enough time with blockchain companies, some of the leading ones in the world, that we found ourselves in an environment where we sit ourselves at the most pivotal point in time before you send the transaction into a blockchain environment. You got to make sure what you record in blockchain is verified, vetted, and validated. That's where we stand as Funding Shield for blockchain. As far as blockchain, beyond our contribution towards it is concerned, before it becomes a very uniform play for everybody to use. You know, there's 80,000 title and 100,000 title agencies in the country. There's some 4,000 plus lenders in the country. There's millions of borrowers. For them to have one portal to use as a blockchain is very hard to provide. And so who's going to be that party that's going to lose all the money to get that market share to get there? is yet to be seen. So we'll see how far it gets.
Thank you, Ike. Robert, any final thoughts before we conclude?
Yeah, I'll just keep it simple. Make cybersecurity a priority. Don't neglect it. The hackers have not taken time off during the pandemic. If anything, they've gotten worse. So it's more of a priority now than it ever has been. And then lastly, security awareness training. Focus on that. Do as much as you can in that area as you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
100%. I'll echo what Robert said, everything he said. Best defense is the offense. Preemptively train, educate your staff and clients to provide customer satisfaction. Want to make sure it's a people business. All people are happy, including your staff. Make sure you provide them with training, education, tools, empower them with tools that are available today so you can achieve the cohesiveness, the collaboration, the coordination, not amongst just the employees in the firm, but also the stakeholders that they work with on a daily basis to eventually give a good customer satisfaction.
Ultimately, the people is what makes the company, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you. This concludes our panel discussion today. I'm Veronica Nguyen. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the show.